Hi, this is Open Bharti, and we are here at the Open Source Summit in San Diego. And today we have with us John Mertic. You are director of Open Mainframe Project at Linux Foundation.
Yes.
First of all, what do you do as a director of the Open Mainframe Project?
I just really help the community be able to execute better, help operations, help the projects provide support for all the functions. We joke here at the Linux Foundation, we're sort of the janitors of open source at times, because we do all of the work so that the technical people, the developers, can all be successful and drive innovative technologies, and that's what we do.
Let's talk about the state of Open Mainframe Project.
So, the state of the project, we're 4 years in now. It was actually founded at LinuxCon, back 4 years ago. And it's been growing from pretty big leaps and bounds. And it's really interesting if you think about the mainframe industry, you think this is like the most proprietary industry in all the world. But the reality is open source has been a part of the mainframe platform for at least 2 decades. I mean, Linux came to the platform in '99, with Marist College porting Linux over, and then distributions like SUSE and Red Hat and others started jumping on board. But then, you can turn back the clock even farther, back to 1955 with the formation of Share, which you could argue, if you're really looking into open source genealogy, this is where open source really started, with computer operators and computer sysadmins that would get together at an event and trade code back and forth of what they were doing. That's the term share. I mean, granted, in those days it was on microfiche, but the whole spirit of collaboration, sharing code, actually really started with this industry quite a bit. But 4 years ago, we came all together, and just like any industry where there's open source for a while going on, but it's very vendor dominated, there's a lot of silos of innovation, there's challenges in upstreaming. Having a vendor neutral entity come into play there helps accelerate that growth and kind of get you past that next chasm. So that's really where the project came from, and the state of that has really turned out great. 30 plus members, 7 projects hosted, numerous students, interns, and open source projects impacted, and we've been really making some really great progress.
Right. And how is the project evolving? Because I think you have added some new projects as well to the
Yes. So the original formation was very much focused on the Linux aspect of the mainframe architecture, which is actually sort of the smaller area of already that industry. The larger one is sort of the ZOS world. So a year ago, we launched the Zoe project, which was actually the first open source project founded on ZOS, which is a set of REST APIs as well as a command line interface and a web application framework for accessing ZOS data and services. So it actually expanded the scope of the project into the ZOS realm, which is actually where the larger amount of mainframe developers really are these days. When we did that, it really signaled, interestingly, to the mainframe audience that just what open source was, what this was all about. I even remember being as a part of the announcement, I'm sitting there with executives from Broadcom and IBM and Rocket and saying, this isn't these 3 companies' projects. This is all of your projects. You have an active part in this. And it really blew people away. Like, they almost didn't know how to take it. And after it sank in for about a year, now all of a sudden people are really starting to embrace this, but also they're realizing, wow, this whole idea of collaboration, we could do this too with some of our projects. And in that time, we've actually doubled the number of projects. I was at Think early this year, and in one day, I had 3 different project proposals. People were pitching to me and say, hey, should I bring this to the Open Mainframe project to host here? And I said, absolutely. One of those was Zara that we just announced here today. So it's really been a fascinating thing for this community to really start to get open source, start to embrace it, but then realize that, hey, we can be collaborative. We can all work together here and think about how we carry this industry forward for another 50 years.
Last time we talked to Rocket and other companies, and the whole idea was to kind of bring the mainframe to the modern, not only developer but modern world as well, because a lot of technology that were used were just green and blue. And
yes.
So, and it has been, I think, almost 1 year when we talked last time. So how has the project evolved? What kind of interest and adoption you have seen?
So we have seen a number of different things. One, just on the bringing these communities together, collaborating. Because 1 year ago, you had 3 companies contributing different code bases to a project, and just all of the intersection work of that, and that culminated with a first unified release back in February of the platform. But since then, we've had numerous, mainframe customers that have started playing with Zoe, trying it out in different environments. We're starting to have new vendors releasing products around it. Phoenix Software has came in, and they've released 2 products based on Zoe, and they're a part of our Zoe Conformance program, which also has just launched with 12 vendor offerings that are a part of that. We're seeing more diversity in the code base, more diversity coming in the commits. It's really, on one half, we've started to see the normal flow of what open source projects are. But like I said, I think the bigger thing that we're starting to see is this community is just starting to see, okay, this is, how do we make decisions? How do we execute on building a product? Because there's so much of a culture of how things were built before, and the concept in open source where everybody sort of has a stake in the direction of this, and you're not necessarily waiting for a vendor to guide directions. It's really been something that this community is really just starting to embrace, and they're just also just starting to get the hang of how this works. And then we're starting to see new ideas. Phoenix Software is a great example. Most of the people in the project didn't even realize Phoenix Software was working on something with Zoe until they said, hey, look, we have this app we want to get as a part of that. We have some code we want to get in. And they were all just dumbfounded. They're like, wow, normally we're so used to having to go out, recruit, spend time with these vendors, help them out. Here they were able to take this code and start running with it. And I'm like, this is open source. This is the ease of just getting on board with it, the self-starting ability, the ability just to have the code available to you, under a license. It's really starting to change some thoughts of how to develop software in this space.
What is there in the pipeline, from 1 year from now? We cannot talk about 5 years, but from 1 year from...
I could, 1 year, 1 year's hard enough, yeah.
So, where will we see the project, or what your roadmap, or what does your pipeline look like?
So I think 3 focus areas. One is bringing more projects within the foundation. Zoe really opened the gate here to saying what's possible, and we have, I think, a handful of more projects that are coming to our technical steering committee for review. So I'm seeing that as an exponential growth area for that. There's just so much that's already happening in formal collaboration, and I think they're starting to see the value of bringing this to a vendor-neutral entity to drive it faster. That's a big one area there. I think 2 is around Zoe specifically, because I think this is a game-changing technology for specifically the ZOS world, and continuing to drive our conformance program, which is just in its infancy, but already has 12 applications from 4 different vendors as a part of it, but continuing to grow that out to help build a brand and a larger ecosystem around that. And that's really, we see as a really nice unifying force within the mainframe world. And it also just helps complete a lot of the circle, because mainframe customers are big corporations that expect enterprise-grade security support services around that. And those are the pieces there that are really going to help this get into market. And I think 3 is the diversity angle. I think we need to spend a lot of time of making sure we're bringing not only that next generation, but we're bringing a diverse background in it, so we can even be more successful. And this industry can live on another 50 years past you and I's time.
So you are investing all your time in this Open Mainframe project, but when you are not, working on the project, what do you do in your free time?
I got 4 kids. They keep.
So
me
you don't have
ridiculous.
any free time.
I have really tried to use a lot of work with my kids to kind of see the world through a different light, because I feel like it helps me be better with open source communities. My children come from diverse backgrounds, and also some of them have a number of disabilities. And I think seeing the world through their eyes and just seeing how they're approaching the world and watching them grow up, and some of the challenges that they're facing, it helps as giving me a lot of the empathy as I'm working with these open source communities, and also the skill and the patience to help guide it forward. Because open source, it's something we're all working through. None of this is easy. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. But the reality is it's not. It's really hard. And we have people from a lot of different backgrounds, and also just a lot of different life experiences behind that guides why they choose to even participate in open source, but also how they act in these communities. And I try to be really cognizant of that, and I feel like some of that free time I spend there is just watching them grow up, but then just also learning a lot more about who we are as people and how to better serve others.
Yeah, and you're right about open source. People, it's actually much more easier to just pay somebody higher and get the versus working with. It's not about it's challenging. It's about you also get access to anybody in the world who can help and contribute to it. But that also means that you have to take care of those people also.
You do, and there's trauma. We could go into a whole line of trauma with people and big T and little T, and we could go like 6 hours of interviews on that, because that's an area where I can get very passionate about.
But we'll find some time and we'll talk about that as well at some point.
Yes. I'd love to do that, because I'm really, really passionate about that area, and it's something I want to spend more time educating, because I feel like we can do so much better in open source communities when we look past the surface of people, of where they're at, and understand how they got here and be almost empathetic for them, because I don't believe people want to be jerks on purpose. They're struggling with stuff. So anyways.
Thank you again, John, for talking today.
Thank you.
As usual, we will follow up on the project.
Excellent.
Because by next time, you will have more projects in there. And
I won't even be able to carry them in. Like, they're just going to be so heavy on here. The sticker mule people will have me on their bankroll. It's going to be amazing.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.